Welcome to Centerpiece. This is Evan Yvonne, your host. So I was on my way to bed, but I was like, every time I'm in the bed, I'm just thinking like, I cannot believe David's story. And I'm so fascinated with it that I'm just like, I just cannot believe this adventure of a life that this guy is leading. And so today I should have found this before I started recording. I literally was on my way to bed. So anyway, in First Samuel, I read this really odd story about David. I did not know, first of all, that this guy, and while running from Saul, and during that time, that he actually kind of starts serving one of the Philistine leaders. And we know that the Philistines are the forever enemy of Israel. And he's literally joining up, because he goes there to find refuge from, Saul chasing after him. And I thought it was so interesting because I hate that word. I need a new word for interesting because I'm overusing it and it's getting annoying at this point. But this is so I was reading this the other day and I'm like, man, I got a lot to say about this, but I was like, let me just wait. As I'm like going throughout my days. And I feel like it's important to talk about because that is a real space as well. I need new words, just so you know. It's a real space of, he's already anointed. Samuel has already anointed David as king. David is pretty much just waiting for God to raise him up, which means, in that time, Saul would need to die. And David's unwilling at this point God has delivered Saul into David's hands. So David could have taken his life a million times, but David already had the principle that was convicting his heart, saying that I will not raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. And remember, when the little guy who did decide to help Saul kill himself, David had him killed because he was like, who do you think you are to make the decision and decide that you are going to put your hand against the Lord's anointed? Like, David was not playing about God. And that is just that to me is the epitome of being a disciple, a follower, just a lover of God. So when God says, David has a heart after me, he is consistently showing that he has a heart after God. He would not even kill Saul, even when God delivered him into his hands. So this reverence and this honor that he had was just, it's unmatched. It's unmatched to me. David is a very fascinating character to me. And him being, basically, as I get back to what I was talking about, he was waiting for Saul to pretty much, die because he was not going to be king until there was no king anymore, and Saul's the king. So in the meantime of this, I like the fact that what I see is there isn't this perfect scenario happening. It's not like God set him up at the Four Seasons and was like, okay, well, just wait here, practice being king. Like David is out in these streets. He has literally almost begged to join. Just the ups and downs of what he's going through as he's waiting for him to reign as king, just the ups and downs of what he's going through. He's going through wars. He is fighting. He's raiding. There's a period of time where he's just plundering other places. And before he gets to Saul, in that cave, he's before another king of another nation, and he literally has to pretend like he's crazy because he's scared of the guy. And he's scared of what they're going to do. And this is what I thought was so interesting, is what David is scared. And it's like they began, so it would incite this anger and jealousy with his enemies. They would mock him saying, isn't this is the guy that they were singing about? This song of them, these women creating this song about Saul killing his thousands and David his tens of thousands, it's supposed to be glory to God, in which David did give glory to God. But the enemies, as this song circulates across this world, it is angering all of his enemies. And now they're using it as taunt. So it's not something that they're saying to, admire him or esteem him. Now they're using it like, okay, it's like jealous bait at this point. It's like he thinks he's all that. And at this time, that is what his enemies are saying. Are like, okay, this song about him is going on and on and on, and how great he is. And back then, obviously, the greatest men were the best fighters. And like David had his mighty men that God raised up while he was basically king. And these were men that were doing exploits as far as war was concerned. Like one of them I read literally had one sword. It was him against 600 people. And it said with one blow, he demolished them all. What do you mean with one swoop? He demolished them all. Like literally he swung the thing around, I guess, and killed all of the people. 600. I think it was like 600 people. And that, you can't tell me that's not God. Like no person could do that. And so David had his mighty men after him. So this was like some big thing, like being able to just kind of conquer in war and stuff like that. So I thought it was interesting. I can't get this out of my thoughts because I had never read this before. So David goes and he escapes to a Philistine land. He gets acquainted with this leader. I think his name is Ashish. And Ashish finds no fault with him. Like, he's like, David is basically, he's like, like there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, he's not here to basically kill us. He's here to just kind of find his refuge. They understood that, Saul was looking for him and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's just crazy that he has gone and found refuge in the enemy's camp. Like, this is just the strangest thing that's going on. And at the same time, like God didn't provide, like David, he didn't have like a stronghold to stay in. Like his mission at that point was to keep moving from place to place, getting away from Saul. Even though Saul said that, I'm not going to do anything to you, David understood by the man's countenance that he was lying and that he was still going to try to kill him. So he's moving around, and I'm just thinking like, I wanted this story to not be as all over the place. And it's like, what is he doing? When I get to chapter 27 and I understand that he's now ended up in this Philistine camp, or he's, has submitted himself under one of the leaders. But this is what I thought was crazy. What I thought was crazy is that David decides that maybe he's going to join them and their army. But the other leaders of the Philistines are like, no, he's not joining us. Like he was this. Let me read the scripture. The Philistines gathered, this is 29. The Philistines gathered all their forces at, oh my gosh, my eyes. All their forces at Aphek. I think that's what it says. And Israel camped by the spring in Jezreel. As the Philistine rulers marched with their units of hundreds and thousands, David and his men were marching at the rear with Achish. The commander of the Philistines asks, what about these Hebrews? Like, he's like, what are they doing here? Like, it's like, what are you doing? That's David and his little Hebrew army. Why are they part of, what is going on here? And so Achish is like, is this not David, who was an officer of Saul, king of Israel? He has already been with me for over a year, and from the day he left Saul until now, I have found no fault in him. But the Philistine commanders were angry with him and said, send the man back, that he may return to the place you assigned him. He must not go with us into battle, or he will turn against us during the fighting. How better could he regain his master's favor than by asking the heads of our own men? Isn't this the David they sang about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. So Achish called David and said to him, as surely as the Lord lives, you have been reliable, and I would be pleased to have you serve with me in the army. From the day you came to me until now, I have found no fault in you, but the rulers don't approve of you. Turn back and go in peace. Do nothing to displease the Philistine rulers. But what have I done? Asked David. I cannot believe this. What have you found against your servant from the day I came to you until now? Why can't I go and fight against the enemies of my Lord, the king? Achish answered, I know that you have been as pleasing in my eyes as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the Philistine commanders have said, he must not go with us into battle. Now get up early along with your master's servants who have come with you, and leave in the morning as soon as it is light. So David and his men got up early in the morning to go back to the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel. I am so just beside myself. This guy was trying to join the Philistine army. I did not know that. And while I don't have like a lot to say about it, I really don't have a lot to say about it. It feels like a gossip column at this point, because I'm just like, can you believe this story? But I feel like this is wild. And one thing that I do just kind of like, extract from this, because I'm not really getting like revelation or anything like that, but just in that I'm extracting out of it is that there is that in-between time. And I think that the in-between times says a lot about faith. Like if I'm looking at this story from just the viewpoint of faith, David inquired of God a few times. Like I don't see him inquire, like he obviously when it's time for him to go to battle and all of that, he would ask God, like, are you going to give them into my hands? Will this be a success for me? So I'm just like so perplexed as to what is going on in this time that he is not seeking the Lord. Like what's happening where he is making this really odd decision to not only, and I can see finding a safe space to camp, but what was propelling him to want to also fight in the army, against the enemies of his enemy? Like it just it doesn't make any sense. And I am wondering, I find it to be a real place. I find it, because maybe it'll take the load off of someone that is just kind of like making bizarre decisions in the middle of waiting for God, and how he is just still there. He's not abandoned David. He has not taken away and said, hey, what are you doing? Like, you're not fit to be king. Like, this is all going on in the middle of him waiting, to actually assume the kingship. But his decision to do this is just so baffling to me. And I really want to know, like, what was he thinking? What is going on here, David? This is very strange. It's very strange that would be, like his thought and his decision. But I do find something of a bit of a comfort that as we're waiting on God, like he is still with us, but you could be doing some crazy stuff. And you really, truly still are waiting on God. And you're really still, trying to uphold as much as you can. But even in that, this rejection from the Philistine leaders, the rejection from them, the sending him away, the sending him off, is just, in a sense, it's God. It's like, no, you cannot do this. And it's like, okay, we'll just make a sane decision for you. We're going to send you away and send you back because you don't belong here. And I mean, can't you just feel like the desperation of wanting to be part of something? Just the amount of rejection. And obviously I feel like it's always a shadow of the level and the depths of rejection that Christ had to suffer as he did his ministry and as he walked in the earth. Is David is kind of, his life is reflecting this deep and grand level of rejection. And the feelings of rejection, obviously, and they're already reflecting in the Psalms of just, how alone he was, in a sense. And it had to be, at this point, very excruciating. Because even when you have labored among your enemies, really submitted yourself to them, great humility, really submitted yourself under a branch of this military of his enemies, and still turned away. It's just, oh my gosh, it's excruciating. It's excruciating to just kind of fathom. But again, I'm reading this. I'm reading Psalms, and I'm kind of like, going back into 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, Kings, because I'm finding more and more just unraveling David's life and really looking at it and really seeing the parallels of who David is, and him being a foreshadow of Christ. And in what ways? I want to know in what ways for myself, not just so that I can have information or know a bunch of stuff about David, but I feel like to understand it and to know it and to see the parallels and to contrast these two really who are one, this shadowing and all of that. Like, I feel like it is the kind of meat that's needed to connect and to really be able to connect the revelation for others, and to really be able to argue that Jesus is in the Old Testament, and these figures, these people that God had the story of Jesus, the bloodline of Jesus, He's there. He's there. His suffering is there. His rejection is there. His despising is there. His abandonment is there. It's here in these scriptures. It's in the Old Testament. So I'm more and more fascinated with this guy. I am more and more fascinated because he has this dynamic storyline that kind of weaves all over the place. He tried to join the enemy army. Crazy. I gotta know why. So anyway, these are my kind of excerpts of just being in awe of the scriptures and the stories of God. Master storyteller. There aren't any other stories on earth as exciting, as invigorating, as captivating and adventurous than these biblical stories. So I'm loving it, and I hope that I'm bringing the stories justice by just sharing what I see and how I'm navigating them. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to recording again soon, and have a very blessed evening.